In the heart of a bustling hospital in downtown Chicago, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sterile glow over the chaos unfolding in the emergency room. Nurses hurried past with urgency, their faces masked with determination and fatigue, while doctors barked orders that echoed against the whitewashed walls. The heavy scent of antiseptic hung in the air, mingling with the tension that thickened with every passing moment. It was a scene of organized chaos where lives teetered on the edge and hope seemed to hang by a fragile thread. What happens when hope seems lost? This question loomed large as Clara, a dedicated nurse with a fierce passion for healing, stood at the heart of the storm. She had always thrived in the intensity of the emergency room, where every second counted and every decision could mean the difference between life and death. With her chestnut hair pulled back into a tight bun and her scrubs slightly rumpled from the chaos of the day, Clara's emerald green eyes sparkled with resolve. She was not one to back down easily, and today would test her in ways she could never have imagined. On this particular shift, the hospital was overwhelmed with patients, a surge that had stretched the staff thin. But at the center of it all lay Vincent, a notorious Mafia boss, unconscious and fighting for his life after a brutal confrontation that left him battered and broken. The news of his arrival sent ripples through the hospital. Whispers filled the corridors, and an air of apprehension settled over the medical staff. Vincent was a name that commanded both fear and respect, a figure wrapped in a shroud of danger that few dared to approach. His presence was a stark reminder of the underbelly of society, a world that Clara had only glimpsed through the news and the stories of her patients. As Clara approached Vincent's room, a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. The critical care team had gathered around him, their expressions grim as they reviewed the data on the monitors. 20 experienced doctors had concluded that Vincent was beyond saving, their white coats a stark contrast to the darkness of the situation. They had given up on him, deeming his injuries too severe and his chances of recovery negligible. But Clara felt differently. She could not ignore the flicker of life that still resided within him. There was a spark, however dim, that begged to be nurtured. "Clara!" Dr. Mitchell, the head of the trauma unit, called out, his voice cutting through the noise. His brow furrowed in concern as he gestured for her to come closer. "We need to discuss the next steps. This is a lost cause." "I can't accept that," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. "There has to be something we can do. He's still breathing. We can't just let him go like this." Dr. Mitchell's gaze hardened, a mixture of frustration and disbelief flashing across his face. "You're not seeing the bigger picture. This man is a criminal. The risks involved are tremendous. We have protocols for a reason." Clara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "But he's also a human being. We can't abandon him just because of his past. What if we tried a different approach? Maybe there's something we've overlooked." The tension in the room thickened as Clara's colleagues exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disapproval, others appearing intrigued by her tenacity. She could feel the eyes of the doctors boring into her, questioning her motives and her sanity. Yet she was resolute. Her compassion would not allow her to walk away from someone in need, regardless of their past. Clara had witnessed too many lives slip away, and she refused to let another one go without a fight. Vincent's condition was dire. With multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a head injury that threatened to be fatal, the prognosis was bleak. But Clara saw more than the clinical data before her. She saw a man who had once been vibrant, who had loved, who had dreams. And amidst the darkness of his life, she sensed a flicker of something deeper, a story waiting to be uncovered. As she leaned closer to Vincent, her heart raced. His face was bruised and battered, but beneath the layers of pain, she caught a glimpse of strength. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence, a rhythmic reminder that he was still alive. Clara reached out, gently brushing her fingers against his hand, trying to establish a connection. She could feel the warmth of his skin, a small comfort that ignited a fire within her. "Hang in there, Vincent," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of the hospital. "I'm going to do everything I can to help you. Just hold on a little longer." Outside of Vincent's room, the atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. Clara could sense the skepticism of her colleagues, their doubts weighing heavily on her shoulders. Yet she was determined to challenge the status quo. There was a fire ignited within her, a fierce desire to defy the odds and prove that even the most seemingly hopeless cases could be turned around. Perhaps she could be the catalyst for change, not just for Vincent, but for herself. Days turned into sleepless nights as Clara immersed herself in Vincent's case. She researched tirelessly, exploring unconventional methods and treatments, consulting with specialists, and devising a plan to give him a fighting chance. Each day, she spent hours by his bedside, monitoring his vitals and speaking to him, her voice a soothing balm in the chaos of his world. Despite the grim prognosis, she refused to let despair take root. Yet the obstacle seemed insurmountable. Clara faced opposition not only from the medical bureaucracy, but also from Vincent's Mafia associates who began to loom over the hospital like dark clouds, their presence a constant reminder of the danger that came with his life. They were not there to offer gratitude for her efforts. Rather, they watched with hawkish eyes, demanding results and pressuring the staff to toe the line. "Do you really think you can save him?" one of them sneered as he leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a menacing figure in a tailored suit. His voice dripped with disdain, a challenge that Clara felt deep in her bones. "You're wasting your time, nurse. Just let him go." Clara met his gaze, an unyielding resolve in her eyes. "I refuse to give up on him. He deserves a chance, just like anyone else." The man chuckled, a low, derisive sound that echoed in the sterile hallway. "You think you can change anything? He's a dead man walking. You're in over your head." But Clara was undeterred. Each word only fueled her determination, an ember that ignited her spirit. She knew the risks, the dangers that came with getting too close to someone like Vincent, but her heart would not allow her to step back. She had seen too many lives lost to apathy and indifference, and she would not let that happen again. As the days passed, Clara's connection with Vincent deepened, and she began to uncover layers of his life that had remained hidden from the world. Through her research and the snippets of conversations she had with him during his brief moments of consciousness, she learned of the complexities that surrounded his existence. He was not just a mafia boss. He was a man with a past, a family, and dreams that had been overshadowed by the choices he had made. In the midst of the chaos, Clara found herself drawn to Vincent in ways she never anticipated. His vulnerability, the rawness of his situation, sparked an unexpected connection that challenged everything she thought she knew about herself. She began to see glimpses of the man he once was, a protector, a person who had loved fiercely. And as she learned more, she found herself questioning the very boundaries she had set for her own heart. With each passing day, Clara fought not only for Vincent's life, but for her own understanding of redemption, compassion, and the gray areas that often define humanity. Would she be able to save him? Or would the shadows of his past ultimately consume them both? As she continued her battle, Clara's resolve only grew stronger, setting the stage for a journey that would change everything. With a heart full of hope and a spirit that refused to waver, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to make a difference one heartbeat at a time. Clara stood in the dimly lit hallway of the hospital, her heart racing as she absorbed the weight of the situation. Vincent's life hung precariously in the balance, and yet the reality of his circumstances felt almost surreal. She had seen trauma and despair before, but there was something about Vincent that stirred a mix of emotions within her. He wasn't just another patient. He was a man with a story, a past that echoed through the sterile walls of the hospital. Leaning against the cool metal railing, Clara fought against the rising tide of doubt that threatened to drown her optimism. How could she, a mere nurse, hope to make a difference in the life of someone so entrenched in darkness? In her mind, the voices of the 20 doctors echoed. They had collectively deemed Vincent beyond saving, a lost cause after their exhaustive efforts to stabilize him had yielded little success. Their clinical detachment, while rooted in years of experience, left Clara feeling uneasy. She had always believed that medicine was more than just a science. It was an art that required compassion and understanding. As she paced the hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had to try, that perhaps there was still hope hidden beneath the layers of his injuries. With a determined breath, Clara returned to Vincent's room, her resolve hardening with each step. The beeping of machines and the faint rustle of nurses going about their duties filled the air, but all she could focus on was the figure lying unconscious on the bed. Vincent's face was bruised and battered, yet there was an undeniable strength in his features, a flicker of the man he once was. Memories of his past, rumors whispered in dark corners of the city, flashed through her mind. He was a Mafia boss, a figure feared and respected in equal measure. But Clara had always been drawn to the stories that lay beneath the surface, the hidden nuances that defined a person. She pulled up a chair beside his bed, her fingers lightly brushing against the cool metal of the bed railing. What had led him to this moment? What choices had he made that brought him here, on the brink of death? As she sat, she began to talk to him softly, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts. "Vincent," she said, "I know you can hear me. You fought so hard to get here. I believe you can fight this too." Her words hung in the air, a gentle plea that felt more like a promise. In that moment, she made a silent vow to uncover the layers of his life, to understand the man behind the title, and to help him find a way back to the light. Over the next few days, Clara immersed herself in Vincent's case, poring over his medical records and speaking with the few staff members who had been involved in his treatment. Each conversation revealed more about the complexities of his life and the shadows that loomed over it. She learned about his childhood in a rough neighborhood, the choices that had led him down a dark path, and the consequences of a life lived on the edge. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that Vincent was not just a criminal. He was a product of his environment, a man who had made choices that were often dictated by survival. Clara faced skepticism from her colleagues as she passionately argued for a treatment plan tailored specifically for Vincent. "We can't just give up on him," she insisted during a staff meeting, her voice unwavering despite the pushback. "Every life is worth saving, no matter the circumstances." The doctors exchanged doubtful glances, and Clara felt the weight of their judgment. They saw Vincent as a lost cause, a man who had made his bed and now had to lay in it. But Clara refused to accept that perspective. She believed that redemption was possible, that everyone deserved a chance to rewrite their story. As the days turned into weeks, Clara found herself becoming more deeply entwined in Vincent's life. She would often sit with him, reading aloud from books she thought might soothe his restless spirit, sharing stories of hope and resilience. With each passing day, she felt a connection growing between them, an unspoken bond that transcended their contrasting worlds. She saw glimpses of vulnerability in Vincent's face, moments when the facade of the Mafia boss slipped away, revealing a man who was scared and alone. In those moments, Clara's heart ached for him, and she began to question her own boundaries, the ones she had set to protect herself from getting too close. One evening, as Clara was finishing her shift, she encountered one of Vincent's associates in the waiting area. The man's presence was imposing, and Clara felt a chill run down her spine as he approached her. "You're the nurse who thinks she can save him, huh?" he said, his voice dripping with skepticism. Clara stood her ground, her heart pounding but her expression resolute. "I believe he deserves a chance," she replied firmly. The man scoffed, crossing his arms. "You don't know what you're getting into. Vincent's life is complicated, and he's not the man you think he is." That comment struck a chord within Clara. She had seen the darkness that surrounded Vincent, but she was also beginning to see the light, the flickers of humanity that existed beneath the surface. "Maybe you're right," she conceded, "but isn't it worth trying? Isn't there more to him than what you see?" The associate's expression softened momentarily, but he quickly masked it with indifference. "Don't get too attached. You might regret it." With that, he turned away, leaving Clara to ponder the implications of his words. As Clara delved deeper into Vincent's case, she began to connect with people from his past, individuals who had known him before he became a notorious figure. These conversations revealed a different side of him, a man who had once been a protector of his community, someone who had cared for those around him. Clara learned of his contributions to local charities, his efforts to provide for families in need, and the sacrifices he had made for the people he loved. This new perspective inspired Clara, fueling her determination to help him recover. As she navigated the complexities of Vincent's life, Clara also grappled with her own emotions. She found herself increasingly drawn to him, not just as a patient, but as a person. There were moments when she caught herself lost in thought, imagining what life might be like if circumstances were different. But she quickly pushed those thoughts aside, reminding herself of the boundaries she had set. She was a nurse, a caregiver, and getting emotionally involved could cloud her judgment. Yet, the more time she spent with Vincent, the more difficult it became to ignore the connection they shared. Clara's colleagues continued to voice their doubts, but she remained undeterred. She began implementing new treatment protocols, advocating for alternative therapies that might aid in Vincent's recovery. To her surprise, she found allies among some of the staff who recognized her dedication and the potential for change. Together, they formed a small team committed to exploring every avenue for Vincent's treatment, challenging the status quo of the hospital's rigid protocols. As the days turned into weeks, Clara's determination began to pay off. Vincent's condition showed signs of improvement, albeit slowly. Each small victory felt monumental to Clara, fueling her hope that she could indeed make a difference. She reveled in the moments when his eyes flickered open, even if just for a brief moment. Each time he seemed to respond to her voice, her heart soared, reinforcing her belief that he was still fighting. But with every step forward, there were setbacks that threatened to undermine Clara's resolve. Vincent's associates remained a constant source of tension, their presence a reminder of the world he came from, a world filled with danger and uncertainty. Clara often found herself looking over her shoulder, the fear of repercussions lingering in the back of her mind. Yet she refused to back down. She was committed to helping Vincent, no matter the risks involved. As she worked tirelessly to uncover the truth about Vincent's past, Clara began to understand that their lives were more intertwined than she had ever imagined. The more she learned about him, the more she realized that they were both seeking redemption in their own ways. Clara's journey was one of healing, not only for Vincent, but for herself as well. In the depths of his struggle, she discovered her own capacity for compassion and resilience, and the realization that sometimes the lines between right and wrong blur in the face of humanity. With every challenge she faced, Clara grew stronger, more determined to bridge the gap between their worlds. She was not just a nurse, she was a beacon of hope in Vincent's darkest hour. As the tension between their lives escalated, Clara found herself at a crossroads, torn between the safety of her own heart and the pull of an undeniable connection. Would she continue to fight for Vincent, risking it all for the chance at redemption? Or would she retreat into the safety of her own boundaries, letting go of the man who had unexpectedly changed her life? The stakes were rising, and Clara knew that the next steps would define not just Vincent's fate, but her own as well. She had to confront the fears that threatened to hold her back and embrace the uncertainty of what lay ahead. In the journey of healing, there was no clear path, but Clara was ready to navigate the complexities of love, compassion, and the human spirit, one heartbeat at a time. As the chaos of the hospital swirled around her, Clara felt the pressure mounting. The beeping of monitors blended into a symphony of urgency, and the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow on the scene. Vincent's condition had worsened, and with each passing moment, the gravity of the situation bore down on her. She stood at the foot of his bed, her heart racing as she watched the medical team scramble to stabilize him. The air was thick with tension, and Clara's determination surged within her, igniting a fire that she refused to let be extinguished. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hallway just outside the ICU. Clara's head snapped up, her instincts on high alert. She exchanged glances with Dr. Michaels, the lead physician, who had been skeptical of her methods since day one. His expression was one of irritation, and Clara could sense that he was ready to blame her for any fallout. She tightened her jaw, unwilling to be intimidated. "Clara," he called, his voice sharp as he hurried towards her. "What are you doing here? You should be in the break room, away from this mess." "I can't just stand by and do nothing," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Vincent needs us." Dr. Michael scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. "He's a mafia boss, Clara. The 20 doctors already decided he's beyond saving. You're wasting your time." That statement stung, but Clara refused to let it deter her. She stepped closer to Vincent, her focus unwavering. "Maybe they gave up, but I haven't." "There has to be something we can do." Before Dr. Michaels could respond, a nurse rushed into the room with urgent news. "We need to get him stabilized now. His blood pressure is dropping." Clara's heart sank as she watched the medical team frantically work to save Vincent. The room buzzed with frantic energy, and she could see the fear in the eyes of the staff. They were terrified of what might happen next, and she understood their apprehension. But Clara also knew that hope could be a powerful weapon against despair. Just as the team seemed to gain a tenuous grip on the situation, a loud voice boomed from the doorway. "What the hell is going on here?" Clara turned to see a towering figure enter the room, Vincent's right-hand man, Marco. His presence was imposing, and his eyes were filled with a mix of anger and desperation. The tension in the room shifted as everyone turned their attention to him. "Get away from him," Marco demanded, his gaze fixed on the medical staff. "You're wasting time." "Sir, we're doing everything we can," Dr. Michaels replied, trying to maintain control. "But his condition is critical. We need to follow protocol." "Protocol?" Marco scoffed. "What's the point of protocol if he's going to die right here in front of us? You need to do something." Clara could see the desperation in Marco's eyes, and something inside her shifted. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "We can save him, Marco, but I need your help. If you trust me, we can try a different approach." Marco's gaze softened slightly as he assessed her. "You think you can save him?" "I believe we can, but I need access to his medical history. There might be something in his records that could guide us. I need you to help me get that information," Clara urged, her voice steady and confident. Reluctantly, Marco nodded. "Fine, I'll get it for you, but you better not let him die." As Marco stormed out of the room, Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had managed to gain a small measure of trust from Vincent's associate, and now she had a chance to dig deeper into Vincent's past. She returned her focus to the medical team, who were still working to stabilize his condition. "Let's keep him alive, people! We're not done yet!" Clara shouted, her voice filled with determination. The team looked at her, their expressions a mix of disbelief and newfound respect. Perhaps they were beginning to see the fire within her. While the staff continued to work, Clara felt her heart race as she paced around the room, anxiety gripping her. What if Marco couldn't find anything? What if their efforts were all in vain? But she shook off the dark thoughts, reminding herself that this was about Vincent. His life hung in the balance, and she had to keep fighting. Minutes felt like hours as she awaited Marco's return. Finally, he burst back into the room, a folder clutched tightly in his hand. "Here," he said, tossing it onto the counter. "All his medical records. Now do something." Clara wasted no time. She rifled through the pages, scanning for anything that could provide insight into Vincent's condition. Her heart raced as she discovered a previous diagnosis of a rare blood condition that had gone untreated. It could explain his current state. "We need to start a transfusion immediately," she commanded, her voice resolute. The medical team quickly moved into action, gathering supplies as Clara relayed the information. The stakes had never been higher, and she felt a mixture of fear and determination surge within her. If they could address this underlying issue, perhaps they could turn the tide in Vincent's favor. As they prepared for the transfusion, Clara's mind raced. She couldn't help but think about the man lying unconscious before her. He was a figure of power, feared and respected, but now he was vulnerable. She had learned about his past through the whispers of the hospital staff, how he had built an empire through intimidation and violence. And yet, here he was, stripped of that power, depending on her and the team to save him. What would happen if she succeeded? Would he emerge as a changed man, or would he return to his old ways? Clara shook her head, refusing to let those thoughts cloud her judgment. She needed to focus on the here and now, on saving Vincent's life. As the transfusion began, Clara held her breath, watching the blood flow into Vincent's veins. She felt a sense of hope blossoming within her, a flicker of light in the darkness that surrounded them. The beeping of the monitors steadied, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was a sense of calm amidst the chaos. "Is it working?" Marco asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I don't know yet," Clara replied, her eyes never leaving Vincent's face. "But we have to believe it is." Time stretched as they waited for a reaction. Clara felt the weight of the moment, the air thick with anticipation. She could sense the tension in the room, the unspoken fears of the medical team and Marco. Every second felt like a lifetime, and Clara couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. Suddenly, Vincent's body twitched, drawing Clara's attention. Her heart raced as she leaned closer, searching his face for any sign of consciousness. A faint flicker of recognition passed through his eyes, and hope surged within her. "Vincent?" she called softly. His eyelids fluttered, and for a moment it felt as if the world had paused. Clara held her breath as he slowly opened his eyes, confusion clouding his gaze. "Where am I?" he croaked, his voice barely audible. "You're in the hospital, Vincent. You've been through a lot, but you're going to be okay," Clara reassured him, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and disbelief. They weren't out of the woods yet, but this was a breakthrough, a sign that her efforts were not in vain. As Vincent's eyes focused on her, she felt a connection that transcended the chaos of their circumstances. In that moment, the barriers between them began to dissolve, and Clara realized that she was no longer just a nurse fighting for his life. She was a person invested in his recovery, emotionally intertwined with the fate of this man she barely knew. "Clara?" he whispered, confusion still etched on his features. Why are you here?" "I'm here to help you," she replied, her voice steady. "You need to focus on your recovery, Vincent. We'll get through this together." The room fell silent as the medical team exchanged glances, astonished by the exchange taking place. Clara had crossed a threshold, stepping into a realm that blurred the lines between duty and personal connection. The stakes had never been higher, and now, as Vincent lay before her, she felt a sense of purpose that fueled her determination to see this through. In that moment, Clara understood that their journey was just beginning. She had fought against the odds to save him, but now she had to navigate the complexities of what that fight truly meant, for both of them. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Clara was ready to embrace the challenge. As she stood by Vincent's bedside, she felt the weight of destiny settle upon her shoulders. And she knew that this was more than just a battle for survival. It was a chance for redemption for both of them. As Clara stood by Vincent's bedside, the gravity of the situation enveloped her. The beeping of the machines seemed to sync with the pounding of her heart, each sound a reminder of the fragile line between life and death. She could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders, but within that pressure, she discovered a newfound purpose. Vincent was more than just a patient. He represented a chance to challenge the perceptions that surrounded him, and, in turn, the perceptions she had of herself. The moments stretched into what felt like an eternity as she contemplated her next move. Clara knew that the doctors had given up on Vincent, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story. With determination igniting her spirit, she decided to dig deeper. She had spent countless hours with patients, learning their histories, and she believed that understanding Vincent's life might reveal a key to his recovery. Clara made her way to the hospital's archives, her footsteps echoing in the sterile hallway. She rifled through files, searching for anything that could shed light on Vincent's past. What she uncovered was a life steeped in complexity. Vincent wasn't just a mafia boss. He was a man who had once fought to provide for his family, who had dreams and fears like anyone else. His rise to power was not just a tale of crime, but of survival in a ruthless world. The more Clara learned, the more she felt a connection to him. Both of them were fighting battles in their own right. Back in Vincent's room, Clara's resolve solidified. She needed to advocate for him, not just as a nurse, but as someone who believed in his potential for change. She gathered her courage and approached Dr. Matthews, the head surgeon who had declared Vincent beyond saving. "Dr. Matthews, we can't just give up on him," she implored, her voice steady despite the tumult inside her. "I've learned about his past. There's more to him than what we see. If we adjust his treatment, I believe he can pull through." Dr. Matthews raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched across his face. "Clara, this is a life and death situation. We have protocols for a reason. If he continues to worsen, we'll be held responsible." "But what if we're wrong?" Clara countered, her passion bubbling to the surface. "I know the risks, but sometimes we have to take chances. He deserves a fighting chance." The tension in the room thickened, and Clara felt the weight of her words. She could sense the hesitation in Dr. Matthews, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You really believe that?" he asked, softening slightly. "Yes," she replied, her sincerity cutting through the air. "I believe we can't define someone by their past, especially when they're fighting for their life." After a long pause, Dr. Matthews sighed, rubbing his temples. "Fine, we'll adjust his treatment for now, but I expect you to monitor him closely. If there's any sign of deterioration, we'll revert back to the original plan." Clara's heart soared at his concession, a glimmer of hope igniting within her. With renewed vigor, Clara returned to Vincent's side, eager to implement the new treatment plan. She connected with him in a way that transcended the clinical environment, sharing stories and dreams, hoping that her unwavering belief in him would resonate. As she spoke, she noticed his fingers twitch slightly, a flicker of life that reignited her determination. Days turned into nights as Clara maintained her vigil. She became more than just a nurse. She was his advocate, his voice in a world that had deemed him unworthy. The hospital room became a sanctuary of hope as Clara filled it with laughter and stories, encouraging Vincent to fight. She even brought in photographs of places he had talked about, memories of a life before the shadows of his choices consumed him. During one of their conversations, Clara learned that Vincent had a soft spot for classic literature. She decided to share her favorite passages from The Great Gatsby, recognizing the parallels between Gatsby's dreams and Vincent's struggles. "You know, Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us, she read aloud, her voice steady. He believed he could reach it, just like you can reach your future. Vincent's eyes flickered, a glimmer of acknowledgement. Clara could almost feel the walls he had built around himself beginning to crack. It was a small victory, but to her, it was monumental. In that moment, she realized that healing wasn't just about medicine. It was about connection, understanding, and the will to fight against the odds. However, not everyone in the hospital was as supportive of Clara's unorthodox approach. Whispers circulated among the staff, some believing she was wasting resources on a lost cause. Clara felt the weight of their judgment but refused to back down. She had seen too many patients slip away because no one believed in them. Her resolve was unshakable, and she leaned on the support of a few close colleagues who began to see the change in Vincent. As her bond with Vincent deepened, so did the challenges. One evening, as Clara was leaving the hospital, she was confronted by a group of Vincent's associates looming in the shadows. "What are you doing with our boss?" one of them demanded, their tone cold and threatening. Clara stood her ground, her heart racing but her voice steady. "I'm trying to save him. He deserves a chance, just like anyone else." They exchanged glances, confusion mixed with intimidation. "You don't understand. He's not just a patient, he's family. You mess with him, you mess with us." Clara took a deep breath, her mind racing. "And I'm trying to make sure he has a future with you. If you care about him, let me do my job." The tension hung in the air, but something shifted. One of the men, a tall figure with a hardened gaze, nodded slightly. "Just remember, if he doesn't come through, it's on you." With that, they retreated, leaving Clara shaken but more determined than ever. She returned to Vincent's side, her heart pounding in her chest. "You have people who care about you, Vincent. Let's show them that you're worth it," she whispered, squeezing his hand. Days passed, and slowly, Clara began to notice changes in Vincent. His vitals improved, and the color returned to his face. She could see the flicker of awareness in his eyes, and with each passing hour, she felt the invisible thread connecting them grow stronger. Clara had invested so much of herself in this journey, and now it was beginning to pay off. Then came the day when Vincent finally woke up. His gaze was unfocused at first, but as Clara leaned closer, their eyes met, and a spark of recognition lit within him. "Clara?" he rasped, his voice hoarse but filled with emotion. "Yes, Vincent, you're safe. You made it," she replied, her heart swelling with joy. "What happened?" he asked, confusion clouding his features. "You fought, Vincent. You fought for your life, and I believed in you," Clara said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "And now we're going to figure this out together." As Vincent began to regain his strength, Clara found herself navigating the complexities of their relationship. What had started as a nurse-patient dynamic evolved into something deeper, a connection forged through shared battles and vulnerable moments. They shared stories of their pasts, peeling back the layers of their lives like the pages of a book. Clara spoke of her dreams of becoming a nurse to make a difference, while Vincent opened up about his childhood, the choices that led him down a dark path, and the family he longed to protect. The hospital became a battleground for both of them, but it also transformed into a sanctuary where they could find solace in each other. Clara's colleagues began to notice the shift in Vincent. He was no longer just a mafia boss, but a man fighting for redemption. And as Vincent healed, so did Clara, understanding that her compassion could change lives, even though she had been taught to fear. But as Vincent's recovery progressed, the realities of life outside the hospital loomed over them. He would eventually have to face the consequences of his past, and Clara knew that their time together was limited. The looming question of what would happen next hung heavily in the air, a bittersweet reminder of the journey they had undertaken. One evening, as Clara prepared to leave, Vincent reached for her hand. "Clara, I don't want to go back to the life I had. I want something different," he confessed, sincerity etched in his expression. Clara squeezed his hand, her heart aching at the thought of losing him to his past. "You can have that, Vincent, but it will take time and effort. You have to make those choices every day. I want you to be part of that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've changed me." Tears filled Clara's eyes, the weight of his words settling in her heart. "You've changed me too, Vincent, but we can't rush this. You need to focus on healing, and I'll be here to support you." Vincent nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. They both knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but Clara was determined to stand by him. As Vincent was discharged from the hospital, Clara made a silent promise to herself. She would help him navigate this new chapter of his life, no matter how daunting it seemed. Their journey was far from over. It was just beginning. The day he left the hospital was both a celebration and a farewell. Vincent looked different, not just physically, but emotionally. He was a man reborn, ready to take on the world with Clara by his side. As they stepped out into the sunlight, Clara felt a sense of hope wash over her. It was a new beginning for both of them, one filled with uncertainty, but also a chance for redemption. "Together," Vincent said, turning to her with a determined look. "Together," Clara echoed, feeling the weight of their shared experience. As they walked away from the hospital, Clara couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. Vincent's journey was a testament to the power of belief, resilience, and the human spirit. And as they stepped into the future, Clara knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand, ready to rewrite their stories one chapter at a time. This was not just a story of survival, it was a story of transformation, love, and the unyielding belief that everyone deserves a second chance. Clara had stepped into Vincent's life as a nurse, but she was leaving as something much more. A partner in healing, a supporter of dreams, and a woman who had discovered the depths of her own heart. As the sun set on that pivotal day, Clara turned to Vincent, her heart full of hope. "Let's make this count," she said, and together they took their first steps into a future that was no longer defined by their pasts, but by the promise of what lay ahead.